This Week in Startups is brought to you by Citrix GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing. Visit GoToMeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button and sign up for a 30-day trial. And
Envision. Find out why so many hot startups are using Envision to prototype, present, and collaborate on design in real time. Sign up for a 90-day free trial today at envisionapp.com/twist.
Hey everybody, it's another exciting episode of This Week in Startups. Today on the program I have Bryn Mooser, who is from RYOT, R-Y-O-T, and they are doing exceptional journalism using VR, virtual reality. They're going to Syria, they're going to Haiti, they're going around the world, and they're creating experiences that when you put a virtual reality headset on, can really fire off your empathy and your understanding of what's going on around the world. This is the future of news. It is the future of people understanding their world. Virtual reality has been dead on arrival for 20 years. But you know what? It actually works now. And companies like RYOT are making experiences that are going to change everything. I truly believe that. And we talk about it all and more on this episode of This Week in Startups. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and this is the show where we talk about entrepreneurship, startups, angel investing, venture capital, and where the future is going. Now, the media business is in crisis. We all know this. Journalism is in peril. People are going for the lowest common denominator, fighting to get clicks. But at the same time, conversely, in fact, you have people making extraordinary, incredible objects of reporting and embedded journalism for everything we see that's link baiting. For every 100 link baiting pieces of garbage on the internet, once in a while you find something pretty amazing, a long read or a short video documentary. So it's a mess out there in terms of journalism, but there's also this golden age, and I think people can't find the good stuff sometimes. Well, as an angel investor, I obviously look for the good stuff. I look for the golden eggs, and one of them that I found was RYOT, R-Y-O-T. Now, I met Bryn Mooser, who is the founder or co-founder of RYOT, and he was doing amazing journalism from all over the globe and trying to get people to take action. So I put a little angel investment in, and I thought, hey, this could be an interesting company. Lo and behold, the company became very interesting because of a piece of enabling technology. Virtual reality. The ability to record what's going on in the world and bring it to consumers has been around for a long time, right? CNN, had a big, huge breakout success, not from being a 24-hour news channel, but because of the Iraq War. That's really what put them on the map. The first Desert Storm, because people didn't want to stop watching what was going on. It was the first 24-hour news channel that existed during a war. Well, you know what? The world is increasingly complex. There are tons of war zones, and I think virtual reality is going to have that same opportunity, and RYOT actually is at the forefront of that. So welcome to the program, Bryn.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's pretty amazing. I invested in your company, 2 years ago or so, and you were chugging along on the web, and things were going moderately okay. You had 1 million or 2 million people coming to the website. But then RYOT somehow tapped into virtual reality.
Yeah.
And this has become explosive. Explain to people why you started RYOT.
Sure.
And then how virtual reality and these VR headsets became such an integral part of what you're doing.
Great. Yeah. First off, I'm so happy to be here. So thanks for having me. This has been a goal of mine to be here. So I'm really excited to be here. I think that to echo what you're talking about, it is the golden age of media. It's the most exciting moment that's happened in a long time for media, and that's really because of what is possible out there, especially when it comes to small publishers like ourselves. My background is as a humanitarian and aid worker. So my partner and I were both running nonprofits all over the world. Most recently in Haiti, where we were working with a lot of celebrities. I ran Paul Haggis, the director's nonprofit called Artists for Peace and Justice. And while I was there, my partner and I were both making little linear PSAs that were great, inspiring stories from the amazing people we were seeing in Haiti. And they weren't getting seen by that many people. But the format of short form documentary was really exciting to us. It's great because that's where the industry has ended up going. So it was a bit of luck on our behalf. But what we wanted to do was try to get out of the sort of social good ghetto. There's a world of nonprofits, I think, and it's sort of an echo chamber speaking to the converted, people who care about social issues, who care about poverty, who care about the climate. And what we wanted to do was reach out of that. So the idea initially of RYOT was born very simply to say, well, let's take news content, which is happening, as you know, all the time, all over the world. There's no shortage of content for news. And let's give every story an action so that when you feel something, when news moves you, instead of making it a point where you want to turn off and disengage, let's use that moment to be a moment of engagement, of participation. So when you see a news story, you want to do something about it, you can sign a petition, you can donate, volunteer. That was the really simple idea, and I think what has led to sort of where we are now and our recent success is that we were super nimble along the way and able to keep trying to use new technologies along the way. My partner and I...
Because the web stuff, it worked moderately well,
Sure.
but you were, I would say, lost in a sea of BuzzFeed and Business Insider and Huffington Post.
Yeah.
It's very hard to distinguish yourself when consumers are looking at the news as entertainment, not information.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, your listeners know as well as anybody that the days of a destination website are a thing of the past, you know. So as much as we, over the last 3 years as we were building it, we're thinking about mobile first and what we were going to do, you know, more and more of our users, I mean, millennials are consuming 80% of their news on their phone. So how can we get people to keep going to a website? That became very clear that that was going to be a thing of the past. And also Facebook, you know, changed media forever, changed news forever. Everybody is consuming, you know, the vast majority of their content through social media, Facebook primarily. So when you have one company like Facebook controlling the tap and the spigot of what content people are seeing, it becomes an uneven playing field, which I think gives the smart people in publishing, the smart people in media are looking for how do you build a brand and how do you really distribute across multi-platforms, right? And a brand is more important than ever.
Right. So being Vice or being RYOT or BuzzFeed, you need to be everywhere so that you can build this brand. You can't just build it on your domain name. You have to build it on Facebook. You got to build it on Vine or Instagram, all those places.
Yeah.
So you've done a bunch of filmmaking as well. At what point did you become aware of VR, and when did you guys get your first VR assignment, as it were, and what have you been doing in VR?
It's a great story, actually. I mean, we've been shooting new technology in all of the places where we work for years. We've shot with drones, GoPros. We did a failed Google Glass project in 20 countries. That was a disaster, but really fun to work on. Always trying to see how does this new technology create compassion and empathy, right? And virtual reality is that kind of perfect technology. I saw it.
Why is it perfect?
Well, because as a filmmaker, what's I think the most extraordinary thing is that it's true cinema verite, you know, meaning that you can't hide or fake anything. You can't if you're using a dolly, you're going to see the tracks of the dolly. If you're using lights, you're going to see those lights. If you've got a camera crew with a bunch of boom mics sitting over there, you're going to see them and you're going to see how they influence the shot. This is truly putting a camera in, getting out of the way, and just experiencing that.
That's
that
fascinating.
Part. Yeah, and I think that's to us what's the most exciting. That and you can experience, I think, in a disaster scale and scope as never been before. So my partner David and I have been shooting in the last 15 years almost every disaster, from Fukushima to China and Sichuan to Haiti to Nepal. And every time we struggle with how do you show people just how big these disasters are with linear video or with just a photograph. And the truth is you can't see. Haiti was a great example of that, where the entire city of Port-au-Prince was destroyed. So if you were a traditional journalist and you would take a picture of one building down, if you're seeing that, you can't tell that it's actually the entire city, not just this one building.
Right.
So,
and then if you go up to the top of the mountain or you take a satellite photo, it's hard to comprehend as well.
It's hard to comprehend, and
you
miss a human connection.
How does it look with VR then?
Well, with VR, what you're able to do is see that scale, put yourself in those shoes, and you're also able to make eye contact with people, which is really interesting. And so the way that it happened for us was really interesting. The first time I saw VR was 6 months ago. Contemporary modern VR was was probably 6 months ago. I got a call from a VR company who said, hey, next time you go traveling, and we're traveling all over the world, please take our camera. And we were going to Haiti. And so I called, I said, great, I'd love to shoot VR and try it out. And they said, well, we need to send 2 camera operators with you. And it was going to be for Carnival. And we couldn't do that. That would be impossible. We couldn't send a $30,000 piece of equipment and 2 camera operators we would have been responsible for them.
Yeah.
And so a buddy of mine showed me a VR camera. It's called the Hero 360. It's a 3D printed case with 6 GoPros on it. He showed it to me, and a day later, the earthquake in Nepal happened. So David, my partner, called me. The earthquake happened at 5 a.m. here. David called me at 6, said, I'm going to Nepal. Remember that kid with that VR camera? Can we get that camera? So I called this kid, Chadwick. He's from a company called Viridio, which is a great company. And I said, Chadwick, you have an hour and a half to get to JFK and make a 20-minute window to pass David this camera. And he, by taxi and subway and running, he made it, passed the camera off. And we shot, I really think it was one of the first times that kind of GoPro VR technology was shot overseas. We shot, a day and a half after the earthquake, came home about a week later, cut it. I called my friend Susan Sarandon, who's been a huge supporter of Nepal. She did a voiceover, and about a week and a half later, we had the first VR film in a disaster and crisis zone. So that was an extraordinary learning moment, and we realized this is something that could really change our company and potentially change both crisis reporting and journalism.
All right, when we get back from commercial break, I want to ask you what impact you think this will have ultimately on the news business and also fundraising and just humanity dealing with these crises. And we're going to try it out when we get back on This Week in Startups. Hey, everybody, let me take a moment to thank our friends at Citrix GoToMeeting. I mean, gosh, think about all the time and money and hassle it takes to hold these meetings. My God, you're going down to the valley, up to San Francisco, the traffic, the cost, the flying places. And my recommendation is that you meet your clients and coworkers over Citrix's GoToMeeting. It is a smarter way to meet, and it has beautiful HD faces. Amazing HD quality. I just did an all hands with my team from inside.com, and it was perfect. Everybody had crystal clear VoIP, or they were dialing in, and people were on different platforms. Some people were on their smartphones, some people were on tablets, some people were on desktop computers. And you know what? I have a real thing. I want everybody to have like a headset on, and some people forgot their headsets, and it still sounded really good. It's really the most professional meeting product on the market. It's very affordable. I've had it for many, many years. I think I'm close to a decade using GoToMeeting. And I want you to try it and sign up for GoToMeeting today. You'll get it free for 30 days. You have nothing to lose. So visit GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free button. And if you do it now, your first meeting will be up and running in just minutes. And that's GoToMeeting, and your first 30 days are free. It's a fantastic product. You can also, it has a chat room in it, which is also a nice feature. I like to have somebody take notes and put it in the chat room. You can also record the audio from it in case you want to share that with everybody. And you know what? I do that as well. It's a fantastic product. Thank you, GoToMeeting. Let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. You can find me on Twitter @Jason. Yes, I'm showing off. I have the @Jason.
It's really good, man.
You get there early.
I'm trying for the @Bryn. It's been a long process.
Yes, but you can follow Bryn Mooser. It's BRYNMOOSER. And you can follow RYOT News, RYOT News. And when we left our hero, we were talking about exactly what this technology would do for humanity, bringing in that empathy and really seeing how bad this is. It really is, on a qualitative basis, much more impactful when you see a photo or a video of these things happening, right? I mean, if you look at what happened with the World Trade Center and that terrorist attack, I think it had a profound impact that other terrorist attacks didn't happen because we saw it live. We saw it happening in real time. Yeah. It's led to a very deep scar, and it's in people's memories. If we had seen, and when we saw some of the pictures, I guess, from Hiroshima, these things had a big impact. Those were still photos, I think, mostly. What impact do you think these VR photos would have in a situation like Hiroshima, God forbid, or 9/11, these kind of tragedies, being able to see and experience it in real time on a filmmaker basis, because you're a filmmaker, how is it different?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, The big difference is that there's no hiding anything, like I was saying before. There's no way that if you're a documentary filmmaker, you're going to try to trick something or cheat something. Look, I don't know that we know what the future of VR is going to be. Certainly, if we look at the investments that Google has made, that Facebook has made, that YouTube is making with YouTube 360, we can see that there is a real desire to push the industry forward. I think it still remains to be seen what's going to happen, this Christmas with how video games respond. There's pornography is still going to be, has always been a great
platform driver.
Exactly. Yeah, it's changed. Changed video. It changed high def tapes. Yeah. So I think that there's still a lot to be tried to figure out what it's gonna do. We, as a revenue model, where our revenue comes from is as a creative agency. So we create content for nonprofits and companies around causes. We're working with PepsiCo right now on a recycling VR experience for South by Southwest Eco, which is a good example. So in our space, it's actually this really perfect storm, right? Because right now you can see VR if you've got the headset. If you have YouTube 360, you can watch it in 360 on your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, Facebook, I'm sure, is going to release their in-app 360 player, which is going to be another opportunity for people to see it. But for the place that we're in, I want people to watch it on the nonprofit side in the headsets because you have a captive audience. You're able to sit somebody down and show them an experience, and they want to see it, and then you have a moment where you can get them to make a donation. So for nonprofits...
that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a great moment.
If you come to people and you say, hey, listen, they're killing all these dolphins. It's a horrific slaughter in, what's the name of the place?
In Japan, in Tashi.
These horrible things are happening where the rainforest is being cut down. If you could actually drive them through the rainforest and they can see it being cut down, they can see the dolphins being slaughtered. I mean, that's why the Cove has had such a dramatic impact. This could be even more.
And we made a film with Lincoln O'Berry, who was the guy behind the Cove, we swam with dolphins in Bimini. And so we're showing that film outside of SeaWorld to say, hey, why buy a ticket to a dolphin show when you could swim with dolphins in VR right there? Right. We were just with Michael Moore at his film festival in Traverse City, which is a great film festival. And David and I were showing that dolphin swimming video to some kids who had cerebral palsy who were in a wheelchair, and watching their parents watch their kids swim with dolphins and seeing them cry from it. I mean, not to sound cheesy, but it was incredibly moving, and that's the power of this technology. I'll give you another example. Go ahead.
And we'll get to the example, but it really is, something has happened in the technology in terms of the resolution and the lack of, or the low latency, the lack of delay when you move around, that the brain is actually tricked now into thinking you're there. It didn't used to do that. It used to be like, okay, I know I'm in a VR environment. Okay, this is funny. I'm moving around. Now it's actually, very quickly, I find, when you put these VR headsets on, and most people who are listening haven't actually tried them, probably a small number of people, but when you actually put on whether it's the Samsung Gear VR, which is powered by some Oculus technology, or the Oculus, you actually are fooled. You're there.
There's actually a science behind it too, which is that it stores in a different part of your brain. It doesn't store as a viewing; it stores as an experience, which is actually a way that is able to trigger this sort of empathy. So you remember it as an experience, not remembering it as a movie theater. When you go see a movie, you can look around and there's the aisles and the exit signs and everything else like this. You're really in it now. It also means that every single month, the technology improves. When the resolution is better on the iPhone, it's going to mean that this is now iPhones that are doing this. As Samsung, and the HTC, every phone is going to up their resolution. So when you have 4K screens, it's going to be hard to distinguish between what's real and what's not real, especially as stereoscopic VR happens, which is basically 3D VR, which is, about half of the industry now is 3D.
Yeah. And looking at this, I'm going to pull up right now. You said there was another example or point you were going to make.
Yeah, I was just going to say I was at a dinner party the other night of some friends, and it was a big, high-powered group of people. I had just come with my headset to show this Syria piece. We had just shot the first VR inside of a war zone. We had this piece about Syria, and after dinner, somebody saw the headset and said, hey, let me see this thing. And I said, cool, this is the thing that we just shot inside Syria. We're helping to raise awareness about the crisis in Syria. And there were about 25 people at the dinner. They lined up to watch it. Some of the most powerful, people that out there wanted to watch it. If I had said, hey guys, I shot a little film on my phone, who wants to watch it? Nobody would have seen it, and I don't blame them. So that was a moment where I went, wow, this is actually powerful. Like, here are a bunch of people who don't have a lot of free time, and they want to see it because they haven't experienced it before.
As a filmmaker, we were talking before that you can manipulate and you can cut and you can do all these tricks to sort of shape the reality. Here, you can't shape the reality all that much because you're taping everything, so you're going to see the boom mic and whatnot. How do you then make sure people don't miss what's important? So if you're in this war zone, is there a way to cue them or to tell them like, hey, this is what you need to pay attention to? And have you thought about those devices yet and how those will manifest themselves as a filmmaker?
We all are thinking about that all the time. The people who are in this space, and there's not a lot of real innovators who are creating content around this stuff right now, especially when it comes to sort of this documentary stuff. A friend of mine is this guy named Gabo who's making incredible films with the UN around it. We spend a lot of time talking, David and I, we all spend time talking about how do you get people's attention in places. I think that the easy way around it is sound cues, is here, look over here. There's visual cues you can have, like follow the white rabbit, that kind of thing. But the rules aren't written yet. It's a lot of there's a lot of white space and there's a lot of ability to play around and to experiment with it. And I think that's what is really exciting about it, is that there aren't rules and we can kind of do what we want. And the reality is very few people have actually still seen it yet. So it's not like with a film you have to keep innovating and every Super Bowl commercial has to be a newer, better commercial. It's like every time people see this for the first time, they not only have an extraordinary experience, but they will remember that first time they saw it and where they saw it. And that's an opportunity, I think, both for nonprofits around causes and also for brands who want people to remember that.
And people can go see it right now if they go to ryotvr.com. So RYOTVR.com. And here, I'm going to pull it up on my screen. We'll pull my screen up. And what's really interesting is people don't know about this either, but YouTube has been spending a lot of time here on doing VR, and what you get is this little controller on the top left if you're watching the video. It just looks like a regular remote control, 4 arrows, and you can basically pan, tilt, and zoom and look at your feet. I guess that's the tripod's feet.
That's the tripod, yeah.
And I can go all the way up and see the sky, but people are driving around. Now, I can't move because it's stationary, so I can't like double click and go down the block yet. That would be a full VR environment, not video. So there are two different experiences. One, people make a full VR experience and you can travel through it. And then there's VR video. Those are two different experiences?
I mean, I think there's a lot of experiences like that. There's VR experiences that are fully CG but look very real. And then there are VR experiences where, you could have two kinds in this room. One, we have a VR camera that's in the center of this room and you could look around as if you're in the middle of this studio. The other one is if you put if you put little GoPros on the roof everywhere and you map the entire room, and in that one you could move around it. So if you're a viewer, you can sit down in this chair, you can move around that environment.
Oh wow! So those GoPro rooms, what does it take to set one of those up?
It's a lot. It's a tremendous amount of stitching, and it's a lot of GoPros that you need to be able to do it.
And can it be done in real time? We had a company that was trying to do this in real time.
Yeah, there's a couple companies that are working on VR live streaming. There's a company called Theta that is doing it. I brought one of those cameras here. I can show you that on their next iteration is going to do live streaming, and then there's
this is the Theta camera right here. So it looks like a flip cam, and it looks like it's got a camera on each side. I'm assuming those are 180 cameras or something, or close.
They're actually 190.
190.
Yeah, so they
can do wider. Wow.
So they're 190 because that last 10 on each side is an overlap and it stitches itself out. So it's a self-stitcher. This camera feels like the quality of a flip cam, but the next version of this is an HD version. When that happens, I think it's a game changer because then you have this piece, which is about $300. It self-stitches, and this is a camera that I actually like to use almost better than any of the other cameras because it's so compact. We're shooting a lot in Iraq right now, in Afghanistan, using this camera, not the bigger camera that requires a lot of post-production work.
Because it stitches it all together. It doesn't require 6 GoPros to be put together.
And GoPros are fickle. They're not, I'm sure you've used them before. They're not easy when you're trying to organize 6 of them, or a camera that we're using has 12.
They weren't designed for that.
They weren't designed for that.
So is GoPro going to make a unit that is 6 built together to do this specific purpose? I know they have they're selling the housing selectively to people now. Is that correct?
Yeah, they've got a camera called the Jump camera that they're working with Google on that. It's about a 12 camera system, stereoscopic. But I'm sure there must be back rooms that a lot of this is developing, especially when you have the live streaming part of it as well. And now, as you know, GoPro is live streaming. So when you have the 360 live streaming in VR, I think it's a pretty interesting experience. Now, is it going to take off in headsets, or is it going to be just used in this sort of kind of 360 world where you move your cursor around like up there, you move your phone? I think that remains to be seen. To me, as a consumer, the mobile part is what's most interesting.
Because it is really interesting. You showed me before when you're looking at one of those YouTube videos like I just played. Instead of using the pan, tilt, and zoom arrows, when you put your phone up, you're looking up. When you put it down, you're looking down. So it's almost like your phone becomes a lens into the world.
Yeah. So that's right now on the YouTube app. If you have on iPhones, if you have the newest software update and you get the YouTube app, if you watch on RYOTVR.com and you click on one of those, you can move your phone around and experience that. If you have an Android, you can actually hit a button and it splits, and you can put it in a piece of Google Cardboard. To me, that's the big game changer. Is that VR technology is a mobile-first technology. It's not like a 3D television that you needed 3D glasses, a 3D TV, and a 3D camera. All you need is your mobile phone to experience it.
And a 3D source, right?
And a 3D source,
You need to have
and so, to me, it seems like a pretty good bet because you're betting on mobile, and that's what's exciting.
Yeah. And so that's exactly how the Samsung Gear works. You have a Samsung, what do they call it? The S6.
Yep.
As opposed to the 6S, which was released the day of this taping. It's interesting they have actually crossed paths.
Right.
I think it's going to be a rift in the and the iPhone 6S is 4K.
It shoots in 4K.
Shoots in 4K.
Yeah.
And the Retina display has always been above 4K.
Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's coming.
Samsung has the VR headset powered by Oculus. I heard that Samsung really strong-armed Oculus into getting this because they wanted Oculus needed their screens. So Samsung, this is the backstory I heard, is that Samsung was like, if you want our screens for your Oculuses and you want us to make you a priority, we need to have a priority of getting our own VR headset out there.
Yeah, and I think that'll probably change as that becomes gear itself.
Yeah. Oculus, though, those headsets have to be tied to a computer with massive video cards, and they're super expensive, correct?
Yeah, they're pretty expensive. Although I think a consumer version is going to come out soon that's cheaper.
The Beach, they call that the Beach one?
Yeah.
Have you used it, or
I haven't
under NDA?
I used Oculus right at the beginning. If I was in the VR game space right now, I wouldn't want to be in the hardware space of it right now. I wouldn't want to be in the headset. Well, just because if it's all moving to your phone and a piece of cardboard or glasses that you can do it, or eventually if it's going to augmented reality, I don't want to be in the headset game at all.
Yeah, it's just going to be part of your phone, and you'll just have some snap-on around it.
Yeah.
All right, when we get back from commercial break, I'm going to put this on, and we're going to actually take a look at the work RYOT is doing around the world in hot zones when we get back on This Week in Startups. Hey everybody, let me tell you a little bit about InVision app. I use InVision app all the time with my designer, my product manager, my growth team to share mock-ups of our products. We take those mock-ups and we design them and we send them to clients, to partners, to investors. And we say, here is an InVision link. Open this on your iPhone, on your Android phone, and you can click through and see what this product that we're making is like. And when we're building websites, hey, put your comments on there. We have a partner. We have a big Smart Camp thing going on with IBM, Smart Camp 2015. We can use InVision to share that website and say, hey, is there anything you want to change? And then have a threaded discussion. You can take all those discussions off of email, all those discussions out of the chat room. Listen, email and chat rooms have their place, but not in product design. InVision is like Slack, but for product design, right? So you have Slack for a general conversation. You have Gmail for, asynchronous communication. You have InVision for product excellence. You cannot make a great product without InVision. I am dead serious about that. Every startup I invest in, I show it to them. They ask them to send me links, and boy, does it work. It supercharges everything you do. I love this product. I love this product. I love this product. Get out of email, get out of chat rooms, and do what Twitter, Airbnb, Evernote, Adobe, and many more are doing. Prototype what you're doing in InVision. It just makes designers and teams and founders so much more efficient. Go to InVisionApp.com/twist for 90 days free. That's their starter plan, free for 90 days, only at InVisionApp.com/twist, InVisionApp.com/twist. And everybody thank InVision App on Twitter. I thank them for making a great product and for supporting independent media like This Week in Startups. Let's get back to this amazing episode. Okay, now I'm going to put the headset on. You guys can all make fun of me. But tell me what I'm about to load while I'm putting the headset on. And what are we going to see?
I just cut a little reel for you so you can see a bunch of different shots of some of our films all over the world. Right now we're shooting for a lot of nonprofits, a lot of causes. We did work with Bono and his One.org around women and girls empowerment. There's some Sierra Club and climate change, Pencils of Promise. So you kind of probably looking, some of that's Aleppo, even at Syria.
Yeah, and now I'm seeing a child in a field with a bucket for water.
Yeah, that's for Bono and One.org.
Oh, very cool. This is amazing. You get to see like the entire... And this is some food being given off a truck.
That's in Nepal right after the earthquake.
Right after the earthquake, and this guy's on an iPhone. Now I'm looking at, I think this is Syria. It's just a bombed out city.
Yeah, so that's Aleppo. That's about a month ago when we were in Aleppo.
You know what's really interesting is you talked about how impactful it is. You can really see the humanity of this. And just how devastating it is. All right, now I'm on a helicopter, and I'm kind of scared of helicopters. And it says Alpine Air. I can see the back of it. Did you shoot this?
Yeah,
I'm going over glaciers.
That's going over glaciers. That's a piece for the Sierra Club where we basically show a bunch of slides of the same glaciers in the 20s, and then we bring you into virtual reality to see how far they've receded. And I'm hoping that goes to politicians and influencers and people all over the world, and we'll be standing in Times Square showing people the front lines of climate change, hoping for them to take action in the follow-up or the lead-up to Paris.
And who's the guy on the kayak that I just saw go by?
Oh, that's my buddy Corey, who's shooting those scenes. He's, ruggedly handsome mountaineer man, standing in. And
it's quite a life that you live, Bryn. Like, you're just going to all these places in the world, and while sometimes you're going because there's a horrible crisis of humanity, I suspect you also get to see some of the best humanity, don't you?
Well, look, we started RYOT because what you see in times of disaster all over the world, and we see it here in some of our own lives, is that you do see the best of humanity. You see people coming together as communities. You see people helping each other. We saw it after 9/11. And RYOT has always been a place that we hoped was going to be a place to celebrate that side of humanity. So, yeah, I think that when I think of Haiti, I'm going to Haiti tomorrow night. When I think of Haiti...
You spent years in Haiti, correct?
Yeah, spent 3 years straight in Haiti right after the earthquake. But I've been working there for about 5 years. But the Haiti that I know is a Haiti that's incredibly beautiful, inspiring, full of extraordinary people who are innovating, who have had a really hard time and have been dealt a really bad hand, both from crises, both economic and natural disasters. But they are resilient. And after the Haiti earthquake, there were a lot of nurses and Americans would come down. They go, God, I don't know what America would have done if this earthquake happened there. Hundreds of thousands of people died and 1.5 million displaced. And the answer is we would have done the same thing. And that's extraordinary, is that there is a strength and resilience of human spirit, and we're trying to capture that.
Yeah, and we had our own, much smaller version with Katrina.
And Hurricane Sandy.
Just a lot of people died. It wasn't hundreds of thousands, thankfully.
Yeah.
Is the world getting worse? Because there was a really great book by Steve Pinker, Our Better Angels, about how, humanity it's not as bad, like murder rate down, oppression down, all these things. And then, you watch the news and it really feels really sad sometimes. Do you feel like the world is trending up and that humanity is doing better? Or when you see all this stuff going on and you see some of the despots and these, dictators and the horribleness of what's happening in some regions, does it get you down, and do you think we're going in the wrong direction?
I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
I think if you look at what's happened in this country socially in the last 3 years when it comes to openness about gay marriage, whether it's a loosening of drug laws, whether it's looking at prison reform, opening up of Cuba, there's a social movement that's progressive and that's moving forward, and I think that's incredibly inspiring. We have a lot further to go, but just when we talk about transgender rights and being more open about gender identity that's happening in this country, that's extraordinary. Yeah. And I think that shift is what's happening. To bring it back to media for a second, there was a Gen X media voice, which was, I think, cynical, and it was mean. It was based on a world of do's and don'ts. I'm cool, you're not cool. And I don't think that millennials respond to that as much. I think that there is a desire to not be as mean or making fun of people. I think when you look at the some of the downfalls of whether it's the big Gen X people of Terry Richardson or American Apparel or whatever, it's not funny anymore to sexually harass girls or to make fun of people who are different.
Right.
That's an opportunity.
Yeah, and these millennials are distinctly different. They sort of get criticized. All these new generations do. There's a pro and a con. What do you think the strength of this generation is? Where do you think the weaknesses are in this group of people?
I think that, there's a lot that work at RYOT, so I'll choose my words really well. I'm incredibly inspired by much of the audience. 80% of our audience is under 35. They're committed, they're interested, they're trying really hard to figure out how they can be a part of the solution. They're inclusive. I think those are really great qualities. And I think that there's some challenges of trying to figure out how to work in a real world situation. I think that there's a feeling amongst a lot of them that they can do anything, which I think is double-edged sword. I think it's really great because it's this terrific sort of redo of the American dream. I also think it can be detrimental to building a really great team that has a bunch of different strengths across the board.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great Saturday Night Live skit with the kid from Harry Potter, who's now an adult, but I forgot his name. But who's the kid from Harry Potter?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
It's hilarious because he gets up and it's the millennial show or something. And he's like, what are you doing with your life? And he's like, I'm pursuing like dancing and I'm drawing, ancient Chinese characters as an art form or whatever. And they're like, oh, can you show us that? And he gets up and he dances and he does the art form. And they're like, that's not even Chinese and you're just jumping around on stage.
Right.
He's like, yeah, but my mom says I can do anything, whatever. And it's just like, well, you don't actually have the skill yet. Right. You actually still have to apply yourself and work and have a work ethic and actually get there.
But it's also this, look, you have a front row seat to it, and this show is the front row and the front line of it. But we're at an extraordinary moment. There's not an industry that's not being turned upside down by technology. It's an absolute, revolution. I think when you look at media, since we're talking about media here, the fact that there's a camera in every single person's pocket is an absolute revolution. We talk at RYOT that this is the greatest invention in media since the printing press, the fact that there's a camera on your phone that's connected to the internet. Right now in America, we've got a problem of police killing, unarmed black kids. It's not because they're killing more kids than before. It's because more people have a camera to record that.
Yes.
That's where a technology is influencing a culture, and that's exciting. That's the same is true for kids who are having, there's more and more cell phones and more access to the internet across the world in the developing world. So the real question that we're asking, we do a citizen journalist project that we're excited about with using iPhones. But right now we're saying, well, why do you need journalists like Anderson Cooper or Wolf Blitzer to show up all over the world and tell you what's happening all over the world when kids are armed with the tools to not only distribute content through their phones, but also create that content, post it on Medium, YouTube, Facebook. So then the real question is like, what's the future of journalism? What's the future of reporters? Where is it going to go? And that's the moment that I think if you're nimble and fast enough, Malcolm Gladwell talks about David and Goliath and how, of course, David won. I think this is that moment for media. If you're nimble, if you're quick, if you can see opportunities, then it's actually for the smaller people to have the advantage right now.
And it does seem like this camera is revolutionized everything. Like you're saying, Black Lives Matter and all this stuff was going on long before, it started getting recorded and there was a hashtag for it. It's just now we actually are present. And I remember Peter Gabriel had an organization, Witness.org.
Yeah.
And his concept, I don't know if he was the originator of it, but he was the spokesperson 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I worked at Amnesty International, was just get cameras to these places and have people record what's going on, because if you get it on camera, the world will pay attention.
Yeah.
Is that true now? Or is the world becoming a little jaded towards what they see?
I think two things. One is Peter Gabriel was ahead of its time and the technology wasn't there.
Yeah.
Part of what is so amazing about the phone, for instance, is that you have all the tools you need for a camera crew right now, except it's even better because it's connected to the cloud or it's connected to the internet. So like this, for me, I like to really, sort of like piss off my filmmaking friends when I say, thank God that people don't shoot on 35 millimeter film anymore, because 35 millimeter film, while it was aesthetically perhaps more beautiful, it was only for rich kids. Yeah. Only rich kids who were the son of Francis Ford Coppola could make a 35 millimeter film. Right now, there's no excuse because you got now a 4K camera on your iPhone not to make a great film. And I think that was what the problem with Witness was before, is that who could shoot, and you needed a computer, you needed the tapes, you needed to send it somehow. Yeah,
that's what they were doing. I think they were sending the tapes to New York City in the mail, just hoping that somebody might pay attention. So now what about the jaded part?
Right, the jaded part. I don't know. Again, I'm an optimist. That's sort of part of what I have to be able to do, I think, as a filmmaker. media, pictures, story still has the power to change the world. I think if we look at this terrible picture of the young Syrian boy who drowned, who washed up on the beach, people talked about the refugee crisis, and now it's on the front of everybody's lips, and people are taking in, Europeans especially, we've got a lot to do, Europeans are taking in refugees by the tens of thousands. That's a moment where a photograph changed the world.
Do you feel like this social media, what's the impact of social media on these crises? Because they're very complex, and it seems like people really can spread misinformation, and it's very confusing. Like, how should the public look at something like this refugee crisis? For every time you hear about, like, my God, these countries in Europe have to take some of these refugees and immigrants and try to help them, there's a whole other contingent. It's like, hey, we have to not bring these people in. They need to stay where they are, go into other countries.
Sure.
And these other countries won't even accept them. How do you think truth actually, is there any truth? And how do we get to it quicker?
I think that we will be redefining in the coming years what truth is in journalism or social media. Yeah. I think this sort of idea that the Associated Press had are old. Like, the rules of journalism haven't changed since the town crier. I mean, they're the same rules out there about you need to validate the information and have a second party who, whatever. Like, I'm a humanitarian and a filmmaker. I didn't go to journalism school proudly, so we approach that very different. We approach the news from the side of a humanitarian. If there's a kid who's starving in front of you and you have a little biscuit in your pocket, you give it to them. I don't care if you're somehow breaking some rule of ethics. If there's somebody outside your door who needs something, you give it to them, even if you're breaking some rule of journalism. So I think that what is journalism? What is truth in journalism? How do we know how to trust social media? I think more and more we'll have to figure out really on a really personal level, and I think it's going to go back to the actual consumer of it, of what is true, and maybe people will lead with their emotions and they'll lead with their values again. Who knows?
Who do you think's doing the best work in traditional or in new journalism, aside from what you guys are doing, in pushing these forward? Who do you look at and say, wow, this group is really starting to hit their stride, they're doing great work in journalism? And where do you think you just look and go, wow, this is just sad how the mighty have fallen?
I look at a lot of what UNICEF is doing. Actually, strangely enough, they have a project called U Report, which is a very innovative project where they're setting up SMS alerts for people. It's like a citizen journalist thing, but for people on their cell phones in Africa and West and now in East Africa. I think that's really innovative when it comes to new types of storytelling and reporting.
So they get news on their phones through SMS.
Yeah, they get news on their phones and little alerts on their phones through SMS, and it's a really interesting way, I think, to see what's happening. I think that the legacy brands that we've always trusted, whether it's the Atlantic to Harper's to the New Yorker, are still breaking new boundaries. I think the New York Times has done an extraordinary job to stay relevant. I wouldn't want to be in the newspaper game. I think that what happened in media was that people misjudged when the digital revolution was, and I think a lot of people thought that when the newspaper moved to the desktop, that was the revolution, and they put a lot of resources into that. But what they didn't realize was that the revolution has just started, and it's the mobile phone revolution.
Right. The first one was the warm-up.
It wasn't anything. There's no difference between a newspaper and a desktop site. We didn't even see that coming. The phone,
Yeah, the fact that it's with you all the time, it's updated constantly. I mean, you're with it for a company like yours, what's the outcome for a company like yours? If we look at this 5 years from now, what do you hope RYOT is? How do people look at it?
I think we've been really lucky to have a revolution of new media brands that have come out that I think have done a really great job at establishing themselves. I think Vice has done an extraordinary job of blazing a trail that other brands like Mike has come behind, or Bustle, or Vox for that matter. I think that there's a way to do it differently than all of those, which still feels both independent and at its source feels participatory, which is what we're going for. So I think that we have an extraordinary opportunity to build a great brand that means something, and we can make media actually be about coming closer together through technology rather than than spreading ourselves apart. Now, there is still a great need for us to collaborate with traditional media. We're talking with CNN and with a few others about working on a television show around our citizen journalists and our contributors. That would be a great opportunity where we're working with traditional media and also bringing our own sort of, our own brand to what they're doing. So I think there certainly isn't a space to just get rid of old media and bring in new media. We need both of them, and I think that it's going to be really fascinating to see how they grow in the next couple years.
So you're getting paid a lot, and you have a lot of partners to do these VR, experiences, and they're getting a lot of attention. When do you think there'll actually be 1 million people looking at these? Like, what is the audience right now for these? It's very one-to-one. Like, I have a headset, I showed it to 10 people today.
Yeah.
When do you think we start seeing, hey, 10% of the population has one of these headsets, 20% has one of these headsets, and there's 20 million people with these headsets, so therefore, if you get 10% of the audience, you could get 1 million or 2 million people to watch an experience.
My feeling is this. First off, the one you watched about Syria, the one you watched about Nepal, have hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube 360.
Okay. Which is 360, but it's not immersive.
Absolutely. I think that let's just talk 360 for 1 second.
Yeah.
When Facebook releases in-app 360 viewing, my uneducated guess is that it happens before Christmas. That's when you're going to see the first 360 videos with millions, tens of millions of views, because Facebook, as you know, is going to put big effort into pressing those to the front of the stage. They're going to want to promote it. So you're going to see in the coming months 360 videos with tens of millions of views on them. I think
Which is pretty significant.
I think it's very significant because at that point you're talking about how
you can monetize
people.
Yeah. How do you? Are there wearables? What was the name of this camera with the 190s?
That's a Theta camera.
Theta camera. Is that available like in a wearable where I could put it on a headband or something or on my chest so that it could build it? Because I'm thinking like if we were doing a cooking show or if we were doing something first person, like a how-to video, it would be pretty amazing if you could see my perspective. But how would one tape a cooking show making pasta or something with one of these? You'd have to hold it in front of the person?
Yeah, no, I mean, you put it on a tripod, maybe you make a little hat like a helmet like GoPro does. You can do all of those things, I think, really well. I think there's a great potential for this right now for ancillary content that people have. Like, there's no reason why you wouldn't do a special 360 behind the scenes thing people would love to see what this looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that's just something that you put up as an embedded YouTube thing. We'll do it at the end of this thing. We'll put it up on one of the blogs so people can look at it behind the scenes of how it works.
So I could put that Theta camera in the middle of the Theta, was the name of it?
Yeah, Theta.
Like Theta waves. I could put a Theta camera in the middle of the studio here on a tripod, record it, and then release it.
In a minute. In 20 minutes. And so people on the site could be able to scroll through and see how it looks back and forth.
Yeah, they can look at the lights, they can do a short video. It's interesting.
Cool. But why wouldn't at this point, every travel show do it, every web series do it, every CSI do a little behind the scenes. There's a great opportunity for it, and I think there's an appetite to do it right now. So it just remains to be seen whether people adopt enough. But I'll tell you this, not many people have seen that you can move your phone with YouTube, and I think when more and more people see that is a jaw dropper.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you actually do it for the first time because you're holding your phone, and it's very natural to be like, you get lost in that moment where you're like, okay, I'm looking at the ground. Why am I looking at the ground? Oh, I'm looking at somebody in the eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an airplane in the air. I'm looking at the airplane and the birds. Like it's a very wild, it's addictive.
I was just with, we were at the Apple keynote, and I was with Jerome Jarre. Jerome, who's like the Vine king, 9 million people on Vine, and he's got more Snapchat than anybody else. I showed him 3 hours ago, and he went, I'm buying this camera right now. He bought it on his phone, and he said, I'm shooting everything from here on out.
Wow.
He said, I've been trying to figure out how when I'm walking through a crowd, people see how many people are around or whatever else. If I'm in a stadium, he said, well, I'm going to shoot everything on this stuff right now. But to see him, who's a digital first, mobile first guy, go, I didn't know you could do this. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool.
What do you think the advertising opportunities are? Because when I see that 360 thing, the idea of like, hey, we're in the studio, but there is a physical sign for a sponsor here.
Right.
And when you scan around, you see it, or you're looking at the Syria one and you look around and it has, this is brought to you by, whoever cares about what's going on in the world, click here for more information. Did you see like in-world sponsorship opportunities? What do you think?
I think that there's always in-world sponsorship opportunities. Sure, people would love to have little, water bottle or whatever else it is like that. I think there's those opportunities. There's also the opportunities to create an experience that somebody hasn't seen before. We're really excited about the work that we're doing with PepsiCo because we get to highlight their recycling projects that are employing, hundreds and hundreds of women in South America. They're really cool programs and really innovative programs. When you're able to see how these women are, using recycling to create new jobs for them and their friends in these communities in VR, it's a cool thing, and I think it'll actually change how people think about the company, which is actually doing great things around recycling.
What place in the world, or top couple of places, do you think are most at risk, but most ignored right now? In other words, gosh, if you could wave a magic wand and get people to pay attention, where should the world be working harder to relieve suffering?
I think that without a doubt, it's what's happening in Syria right now.
Yeah. Explain to people what's happening. What's the
there's a humanitarian and refugee crisis that's unlike anything that we've seen in modern times, and I think that we're just now seeing the light of day. But it's been years since people in cities like formerly beautiful cities like Aleppo or Syria are starving to death, and it's under our watch. And I've oftentimes asked myself what would happen if I was around during what happened in apartheid or Rwanda, or would I know that it was a tragedy happening? I think a lot of us, or people who were born during, World War II said, did we know what the atrocities were in the camps and what would we have done? I think that we're in a real inflection point where we have to all work really hard to figure out how we can help for the suffering that's happening in Syria. And I think it's incredibly complicated, but there are people there that need attention and need some help.
And the United States and our role in all of this. I mean, we used to be pretty much the cops of the planet, and for the last 100 years or so, and that seems to have changed, and the Americans seem to think maybe we shouldn't be as hyper involved as we've been. What do you think our role in all of this is?
I hope that I'm a patriot through and through. I was a Peace Corps volunteer because I wanted to serve the country but didn't want to go into the military myself. I think that we have to always try to be as a moral authority as we possibly can. And I think that keeping those values firmly rooted in compassion and kindness and justice and human rights, I think is a good place to start. I've always been a fan of the deeply flawed United Nations, but at the core, those tenets are tenets that we can get behind, I think.
Yeah, it feels like we've lost a little bit of that moral high ground with our torturing people, and that's, the fact that we have the death penalty in this country and so prevalent, and we're increasing it. And so many people incarcerated, we're really not living up to the standard that we're trying to hold other people to. No, and I think we've got to look internally. Yeah, we've got to look internally, and hopefully the work that we do at RYOT can be part of that. Joseph Pulitzer said famously that the work of the journalist is to illuminate the dark places, and so whether that's in Syria or Bangladesh or whether that's outside these offices here, I think that's our role. Yeah, here in the Tenderloin it's pretty crazy over there. It is really crazy, actually. Yeah, it's like it's nothing. I mean, when you talk about like a war-torn place and like the experience is, like you're experiencing a lot of people who are suffering in like a 6-square block area. It's we're staying confounding. We're staying up the street on Turk Street, and you're taking your life in your hands. I asked somebody for directions, and they said, "Don't take Turk Street, take the street over because it's an incredibly dangerous place." And you will get stabbed. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. So we deliberately took Turk Street down here, and it was pretty. How would you compare Turk Street to the war-torn places you've been? Well, you can easily compare it to downtown Los Angeles at Skid Row, which is the same thing. Right. So I won't take any moral high ground because I'm from LA. We have our same problems there too. Yeah, it's just weird how the city contains it in one area. Yeah. It feels like some weird dystopian government policy to allow one area to be a disaster. This is what is infuriating me about what I've seen here is this is a city that's so wealthy, and I live in Cow Hollow, which is next to Pack Heights, which is a pretty Tony area, it seems, and other areas in the city are just completely immune from the suffering that's going on in this 6 square block area and the danger. And they're allowing like the open air, and I'm for drug reform, fine, but I mean, to be selling bath salts and crystal meth on the street, these are really dangerous drugs to be allowing people to take.
This is I think it's a time to ask a lot of hard questions that we have to be asking of our politicians.
Yeah, this town's got a laissez-faire attitude towards it that is just disturbing. Well, listen, congratulations, 30 employees now, 5 million unique visitors a month, and a great set of investors outside of myself, I must say. But you got Todd Wagner in there, which is really interesting. Mark Cuban's former partner. And James,
he's great.
Joaquin, how do you pronounce his name? Joaquin.
Yeah.
James Joaquin, who's running Obvious Ventures now.
Yep.
And amazing group of celebrities. What's the role of celebrity in all this? I notice you always have these celebrities involved. Is that just because you're in LA, or is there like a real thesis behind having celebrities? You name dropped Susan Sarandon and stuff like that. Do they actually make a difference in communicating the message?
It's so funny. As part of my background, I grew up in New York and LA. I ended up having a lot of friends who became industry leaders and, celebrities. I had this rare skill when I started RYOT, which is that I knew a lot about development and filmmaking, and I knew a lot of people who had become famous almost accidentally. So I worked a lot in connecting those people with nonprofits. It was definitely much more important than it is now. I think when social media started, it was the very few celebrities that had incredible reach. That's a tool that that people don't have, and that's really extraordinary. So when you're able to motivate or get Selena Gomez to talk about refugee crises, that makes front page news. So I do think there's still that role as long as people are listening, for better or for worse, to celebrities. But if we can get Kim Kardashian or Caitlyn Jenner to talk about what's happening in Syria right now,
are they talking about it?
I think sometimes they do. Maybe not. I think Caitlyn Jenner's been talking about transgender issues, and it's moved the needle considerably. For sure. So I do think that there are still times where you have people being able to talk about that. And look, the role of celebrity has changed too. It's not just George Clooney headlines a fancy cocktail party and writes a book about it and a couple people toast him. It's almost like George Clooney doesn't matter in the social media world because he's not tweeting. It's more important if you have Jerome Jarre, who we were just with talking about it, right, who's got millions and millions of Snapchat followers. So the rules of which celebrities people listen to have changed a considerable amount, but people listen to people who are influencers. When you say something on social media, a lot of people listen, and it becomes, in many times, if you're saying something controversial enough, it's a blog post and it becomes news. Right. So there is still a role for that. And
these celebrities seem, it'd be easy to be cynical in saying they're just crafting their PR.
Sure.
Like, I've got to attach myself to something so I look like a mensch, and it may, buffers out any other maybe warts I have or something, or the rough edges. But, having watched, Ben Affleck with his Congo stuff, I mean, this is a level of involvement and engagement. I've gone to his poker tournament every year, and he's super involved in this.
Sure.
This is not a pastime or just something he's doing to get, bonus points, right?
I've been working with celebrities in philanthropy for the last 10 years without getting into name dropping, so many different...
who has done that? Who do you think, if you had to say these 2 or 3 celebrities have actually made the most positive change in the world, who would they be? Leonardo DiCaprio seems to be pretty effective with this.
I think Leonardo DiCaprio has done great stuff in terms of how the amount of money and where he's been able to put it when it comes to endangered species. When you talk about people who get their hands dirty, I worked with Sean Penn a lot in Haiti, who absolutely
goes there,
kicked ass, lived there, slept in a tent in a little hammock for a while. I mean, I watched him do amazing work and has continued to go there and be a force for good. Susan Sarandon is another great example. She was in Nepal before the earthquake. She was in Nepal afterwards. She's on her way again there next week. There's true activists who have spent their life, annoyingly yelling about issues that they care about, sometimes most times to the anger at their management teams or their PR teams who say, stop talking about it.
Hey, tone it down, yeah.
Yeah, hey, tone it down. And they don't. I think that there's a misnomer about celebrities that celebrities who, this is my experience, of course, but celebrities who have made it in the industry have to have, for the most part, a certain amount of smarts to have survived.
Sure.
The ones that don't who aren't smart are dead or have dropped out.
Right.
You have to be smart to make
Savvy.
it to an A-list.
At the very least, savvy.
Yeah, and there are exceptions to the rules. I'll say that, but I'll tell you that one thing also too is that when you're an actor, for instance, and you're working on a set, you have to be able to communicate with people from all different class levels, from the driver to the makeup person to the producer and to the money guy behind
studio
it.
head, whatever.
I think class intelligence, to be able to move between classes, is a really high form of intelligence, and so I see a lot of people who have, because they understand that, or they talk to a lot of people from different walks of life, they have compassion for that, and I think a lot of them feel a certain amount of guilt, probably, that they got really lucky and they have a lot of resources. So
there's some awareness there, right?
There's
like
awareness.
Look at Angelina Jolie, and she's, I guess, got some awareness that she can actually do good in the world.
Yeah. Do I sound like just an optimist about everything? Do I sound just like a earnest wanker? No?
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's very interesting because you're running a commercial venture.
Yeah.
That is trying to build awareness. What really attracted me to the investment is not that I thought I would have like a tremendous return on it, but I'm very fascinated by the entrepreneurs who are mixing, capitalism and causes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this cohort is going to actually be successful or not on one of those things, or both of those things.
Yeah.
But I do look at the B corporations that are going on. So I'm an investor in Hand Up and what you're doing, and I'm on the board of Costcast. And I look at those companies and I say, these founders are really trying to make a business and make an impact.
Right.
And if it does work, it is a new model for capitalism.
Right.
That I think will be the post-capitalism capitalism.
I hope you make a huge return financially, but I also hope you make a social return. But that's the game that we're in it for. This has to succeed financially because I want to break the old model and this becomes the new model. We just showed our film. We made a film about Ebola called Body Team 12. It won Tribeca Film Festival. Hopefully it'll get nominated for an Oscar this year. We played it at the Forbes 400 conference in New York, which, as you know, is 400 of the top billionaires in the world. Yeah. About 150 of them showed up, no entourage, just them. And it was a 2-day conference where, we played our film with President Clinton and Dr. Paul Farmer. And it was a 2-day conference with 120 of the richest people in the world. The entire program for 2 days was about philanthropy. None of it was about, hey, what's a better way to make money is to sell your shoes, make them in China and whatever here. Everybody talked about global health and women and girls' issues.
It's fascinating that capitalism has been derided as being out of control, polarization of wealth. There certainly are these issues where a small number of people control a large amount of the wealth. Yeah. And it's like, you put these, whatever the statistics are, you put these 20 people on a bus, they have more than 50% of the, you put them on a plane, they have, the top people on a 747 have more wealth than the bottom 80% or something crazy.
I never heard that.
There's some crazy statistic, like you put these 300 billionaires on a plane,
right.
All together they have more wealth than than everybody underneath the plane.
Wow.
Whatever. Putting all that aside, which are all very interesting mental constructs, the fact is when these people become so wealthy like Bill Gates has become, there's a profound sense of responsibility and guilt that I think most of them face.
Sure.
It's a crisis of, like you're saying, of guilt of around how much bounty they have in their life, and they want to just try to give it back and pay it back.
Balance the scale
a little bit. I mean, It's just a tremendous burden for these people, I think, sometimes to wake up. We know a bunch of them, a bunch of friends in common. Like, I think they want to actually give back so that they can actually... And so in that case, in one way, perhaps we can look at the flawed nature of capitalism and ultimately, depending on how many people take the giving pledge, it may wind up being the ultimate philanthropy machine.
Right. Well, and I don't care if they're doing it because somebody's a new girlfriend is forcing them to do it and they don't want to look like an asshole, or that they're doing because they really care.
Or guilt,
yeah.
Or whatever reason.
In the end, I don't care as long as we can help them make the right decisions with where they invest that money. I do think there's a lot of people who really believe that they can be a force for good after all the time. Look, I don't think that anybody really makes a ton of money without taking that money out of somebody else's pockets, right? So I mean, there is that fatal flaw in the whole thing. But if you look at what Bill Gates has done, he's pretty much eradicated polio. That's badass, right? That's a pretty
certainly
amazing
better
thing.
than Windows, whatever. I had Ann Winblad on the program, and she actually dated Bill for a while, famously, which was kind of awkward to bring up, but I kind of had to as the interviewer. But she dated Bill Gates, and we talked about, like, what is he going to be remembered for?
Right.
And I kind of feel like post-Microsoft is just so much more interesting. Bill Gates, post-Microsoft, phenomenally interesting individual, phenomenal projects.
Absolutely.
He's got to be like, Microsoft has to be, I think ultimately Microsoft becomes number 5 on the list of accomplishments.
Sure, yeah. We work with Paul Allen. We just made that Ebola film we made with Paul Allen. If you look at what Paul is doing right now, I mean, it's extraordinary, and it's so much more interesting than Microsoft ever was, right, of what he's able to do right now and the big issues that he's taking. I was just with Sean Parker, and what Sean is about to tackle is also going to be really innovative.
What is he working on? His politics stuff?
You know,
I told him to get out of that politics stuff. It's not his group of people.
After the politics stuff, it goes into a lot of medicines and biomeds and really interesting big questions that he's asking from a total outsider. Questions about, well, how do let's try to get rid of malaria. Well, let's not just do it with a bunch of bed nets that we pass out that become trash, but why don't we eradicate it from the root? Like, those are really cool approaches that it takes the mad genius mind of Sean Parker to be able to come in and approach.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character.
Sure is.
I got a lot of Sean Parker stories.
Me too.
We have a story in the industry. We have a saying in the industry we call it Sean Parker time.
Right. Sean
Parker time is like whatever time you're supposed to meet with Sean Parker, say at 6 p.m.
Right.
That basically is plus or minus 48 hours at this current point in time. It used to be Sean Parker time was like plus or minus 45 minutes.
Right.
But it became plus or minus 2 to 4 hours.
Right.
And now I think Sean Parker time is kind of plus or minus about 30 hours right now. If you were going to meet with him at 8 p.m. tonight for dinner, it's probably going to be brunch on Friday, maybe. I don't know. He might walk in 2 hours early. You never know.
Yeah.
I got to get Sean Parker on the program.
But it's certainly interesting that time. When it does happen.
When you do finally get, 1 in the
works.
morning when you find him and you're having fried chicken, it's going to be a very interesting conversation.
Exactly.
All right, Bryn Mooser, continued success. I'm really excited to be an investor in the company. I'm really excited.
I loved this conversation.
Yeah,
it was everything. It was crack. I mean, it was everything I dreamt of.
There you go. You dreamt of this conversation.
I did.
Well, you know what?
Thank you for having me.
I think it's entrepreneurship is really what's going to drive a lot of the change in the world.
Yeah.
And if you think about how crazy it is to start something like RYOT, it's, the odds are against you.
Yeah.
Tremendously, in fact. When you told me the idea, I was like, wow, this is going to be a 1 in 10 chance.
Yeah.
And now you got this VR thing, and you've survived for 2 years or 3 years now. And it's like, okay, now you got a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
And you make it to year 5, all of a sudden you're like, hey, now I got an 80% chance.
Right.
And it's year after year of just lowering the odds of the, of your little baby surviving, right?
Yeah.
Lowering the odds of the baby dying and becoming a strong company.
Well,
and I think you're getting there.
And I'll say, you've been a great mentor for me, but early on, I think when we first talked about it, you said, yeah, it's a cool idea, but I believe in you, and I know that you've got a spark and you won't let it die. And, I don't think I understood that fully when you said that to me, but certainly after being in this now for almost 3 years and meeting a tremendous amount of founders, I know that to be true is that, like, I know that I'm a good bet in that way, and it's not going to fail. Now, it may turn into something else and it may become a, elephant rental company for circuses.
It may fail. Here's the thing. When you pick people to bet on, you want somebody who has so much passion and so much ability to execute that the chances of failure go down tremendously. Because if a person can execute and you are a deft filmmaker and creative, and I saw that in you very clearly, and you're motivated, at least we know when you get to work in the morning, you're going to work on something with all your passion and heart, and you have the skills.
Right.
So for somebody who's skilled and has passion to have, the steak they make turn out horrible, the chef, it's like, that's generally bad luck. And they're generally going to learn from it and then make another steak.
Agreed.
That does that. So when I meet with people, I met with the founder today, I was like, hey, by the way, the execution here is not there, and I don't feel you're super passionate about the idea. I don't think any amount of money given to you is going to make this correct. You have to get your skills a little bit sharper.
Yep.
And if your skills are sharper, and then you find something you're passionate about, wow, then you got that wedge.
Love it.
Right? You get the wedge that you can...
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, listen, amazing. All right, everybody go visit RYOT News, ryotvr.com. What's the website, ryot.org?
Ryot.org, RYOT.
RYOT.org. You follow Bryn Mooser on the Twitter, BRYN, Mooser, MOOSER. And his co-founder is David Darg. I should give him a shout out, right?
He's outside picking up girls right now.
David, D-A-R-G. He's here picking up, hopefully not on Church Street. All right, listen, it's been a great show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.